Hey everybody, Tim here. As you heard at the top of the show, in this episode we're going to be discussing Christopher Columbus, more importantly, the crimes of Christopher Columbus and his crew. Now, the sources we're using for this aren't just any old sources. They are from the journals of Christopher Columbus, his crewmates, and others that traveled with him. Now, we wanted to give you a trigger warning about all of these things that we're going to be saying in this episode because these descriptions, again, in Columbus and his crew's own words, are incredibly horrifying and violent and graphic in nature. So if you are not okay with watching any of this or hearing any of these things, feel free to click away. The Oatmeal has a comic on this exact subject that's more easily consumed. It's still pretty graphic, but in the end of the day, we highly recommend it. But if you're willing to watch and hear the actual history of Christopher Columbus, then we highly encourage it because this needs to be put out there. And it has been put out there many times. We just, for good measure on our show, wanted to do it this time. But many people lost their lives at the hands of that man and the 1,200 people that he brought with him to completely wipe out entire civilizations. And that history needs to be taught. So without further ado, enjoy the episode. We hope you learned something, and happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Tonight on America, the conversation, is Christopher Columbus still worth worshiping? The answer is quite simply no. Also, Christopher Columbus did not discover America. If anything, Leif Erikson did, and all Christopher Columbus did was find the Caribbean and enslave and murder many people, all in the name of gold. Where was I? Oh, right. All this and more tonight on America, the conversation. God, I hate Columbus. Hello and welcome to America the Conversation. I am one of your hosts, Tim Phillippe, and with me, as always, is Andrew Turner. What's up, Andrew?
Oh, up upon the deep blue sea, you asked of me, what shall I do? It's genocide, genocide for the king and queen, genocide for the king and queen.
Did we learn this one in school about Christopher Columbus?
I'm just making shit up as I go along.
Oh, that sounded like a genuine, minus the genocide. I figured you replaced genocide, a different word with genocide, and that's a song you learned in school. Like, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
You know me, a bard at heart. Like, I just make this shit up as I go along. Like,
yeah. Well, audience, in 1492, Columbus did sail the ocean blue and then proceeded to kill half the Caribbean. We're going to talk today because in a few days from this episode is Indigenous Peoples Day. Used to be called Columbus Day, is still called Columbus Day in a lot of places, mostly right-wing places. So that's kind of a weird social battle that we're fighting, despite the fact that we have so much history on Columbus and evidence to the contrary of him discovering America. Some people like to say that he discovered that the world was round, despite that was a absolute fact in 1400s.
We've known the world is round since like ancient Greece.
Yeah, like they figured it out then. And then someone said Egypt, science is illegal, and then we were like, okay.
Yeah, Egypt and the Greeks, I guarantee you, and probably a lot of the Indus Valley civilizations. I know the Chinese Han Dynasty had all discovered that the world was round roughly 2,000 to 3,000 years earlier. Yeah. Yeah, and discovering America, I would believe that both the Vikings and the native people there would disagree. He wasn't even the first European to fucking discover the place.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, he discovered America. I'm like, well, the people were already there, so no. Like, someone whose name we don't have discovered America 10,000 years ago when they walked across the ice bridge. So, like, and even then I think we'd consider that one whole continent. But,
millions of people. I think a lot of Americans don't realize this because we don't teach it well in our history.
Millions of people lived here,
hundreds of millions of people lived here, like upwards of 100 million or more. And Tenochtitlan, the capital of Mexico City, was larger, cleaner, better maintained than any European city at the time, equal to size in Paris. Like the Dakota Mountain civilizations were huge, had huge cities.
The ones in the Dakotas, right? Is that the one where they had like a democracy? They had like elections.
The Iroquois Confederation, I think
that was the one I'm thinking of.
Like the Sioux, there were so many native. First off, there were hundreds and hundreds of native tribes that I am not going to try to even dive into. But please, first off, find indigenous creators, listen to indigenous creators, shut up if you're a white person and they have something to say about indigenous rights and indigenous activities. and four, support indigenous activists, not only in indigenous representation, but environmentalism, in religious freedom, in like state protection. Like we'll get into later in the episode how indigenous people still face a lot of
shit.
Institutionalized racism and colonialism. But one of those things, at least symbolically, is Columbus's holiday that he does not deserve as a fucking evil, sneaky Italian Roman who finally convinced one kingdom, the Spanish, who were desperate, that they should fund his fucking far off crazy idea. And then he got lucky and survived. But he was, I think we're a minute in now. He was an essayer. He R-worded a lot. Hundreds of people ordered his men to do the same.
People who are having trouble figuring out what we're talking about, just to understand what it is.
Assault of a certain nature. And assault of another nature. Pretty much every version of assault that you can think of.
Hands off,
yeah,
which I can say that, but not the other thing, which is wild. But like he cut people's hands off, and if they didn't bring him the gold that they needed. Like
I've pulled up some quotes that he has just because I know we're going to be talking about what right wingers say, but I do want to say Columbus would let his men do whatever they want. This is kind of our intro to what Columbus did whenever he got to the Isles in the Caribbean. One of his men and childhood friends, Michel de Cuno, describes in a letter how he treated native women. While I was in the boat, I captured a very beautiful Carib woman, whom said the Lord Admiral gave to me. When I had taken her to my cabin, she was naked, as was their custom. I was filled with a desire to take my pleasure with her and attempted to satisfy my desire. She was unwilling, and so treated me with her nails that I had wished I had never begun. But to cut a long story short, I then took a piece of rope and whipped her soundly, and she let forth such an incredible screams that you would not have believed your ears. Eventually we came to such terms, I assure you, that you would have thought that she had been brought up in a school for whores.
Dude, like,
cool guy.
He yada hit that story, by the way. If you didn't catch that, to make a long story short, is yada.
Someone.
I whipped her. Like, what the fucking Christ? Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to be quoting from an article here that is quoting from another newspaper. For you, those of you who don't know what Focus on the Family is, it's a right-wing Christian conservative thing that wants everybody. They're fascist, sure. That's one of many ways to describe these horrible people. Dr. James Dobson, horrible person. Christians will argue me on that. I will tell you to fuck off because he's a bad person. So is Focus on the Family. They want everybody to be seventh heaven. They want everybody to be just the nicest, cleanest people they could be in the name of God.
What happened to the seventh heaven, Dad? What happened to the guy?
He is a petty ped. I don't know if I can say that.
He's a PDF file. He's a PDF file. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, no, it's not great, but like that way around. That's
nomenclature.
Never occurred to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Focus on the Family wrote a article that quotes from the Daily Signal, and we didn't look this up, but that sounds like a real Nazi newspaper, kind of like the Daily Caller, which I think is a daily.
Daily. I don't like
the Daily Mail, the Daily Wire,
the Daily Signal, the Daily Bugle. Not a fan of the Daily Bugle.
Yeah, and Daily Bugle's not great either. Well, their article is called
James Jameson's got to get his shit together, I swear.
It's called The Left Hates Christopher Columbus. Here are 5 reasons we should still celebrate Columbus Day.
Incorrect.
One, Columbus personified the American dream. So because Americans like adventure was their explanation to this. Okay, that's the tamest one of these. All right, here we go. Columbus undertook adventure for God and country. And here is their quote. Columbus usually treated the Native Americans kindly, and brought them gifts in order to win their favor. He brought with him a letter from King Ferdinand to the Indians. The king wrote, "We in his name will receive you with love and charity, respecting your freedom and that of your wives and sons and your rights of possessions, and we shall not compel you to baptism unless informed of the truth, which wish to convert you to the Holy Catholic faith," which they ended up forcibly doing anyways. So that's there you go. That's one. Number 3.
Yeah, you have the choice to accept Jesus.
Yeah,
Stabs. Yeah.
Stab. If Columbus is off limits to sell, man, this one. Okay, this one I audibly yelled, "What the fuck?"
Wait. I want to stop. So you're moving on from 2 to 3, right? On point.
I'm moving on from 2 to 3. Yeah.
Okay. I will real quick. I want to quote Bartolome de las Casas, the priest who accompanied Columbus on his conquest of Cuba.
Okay. Yeah. Here we go. Sure.
Okay, cool. He detailed the abuse and murder of the native population. In his words, endless testimonies prove the mild and pacifistic temperament of the natives. But our work was to exasperate, ravage, kill, mangle, and destroy. And the Christians with their horses and their swords and pikes began to carry out massacres and strange cruelties against them. They attacked the towns and spared neither the children, nor the aged, nor the pregnant women, nor the women in childbed, not only stabbing them and dismembering them, but cutting them into pieces as if dealing with sheep in the slaughterhouse. They laid bets as to who, with one stroke of a sword, could split a man in two, or who could cut off a head, or split out the entrails with a single stroke of the pike. They took infants from their mother's breasts, snatching them by the legs and pitching them headfirst against crags, or snatched them into the arms and threw them into rivers, roaring with laughter and saying as the babies fell into the water, "Boil there, you offspring of the devil." Other infants they put to the sword, along with their mothers and anyone else who happened to be nearby. They made some low, wide gallows of which they hanged the victims' feet and almost touched the ground, stringing up their victims in lots of 13 in memory of our Redeemer and his 12 apostles. Then they set burning the wood at their feet and burned them alive. To others, they attached straw or wrapped the whole bodies in straw and set them afire. While still others, all those that they wanted to capture alive, they cut off their hands and hung them round the victim's neck, saying, "Go now, carry this message," meaning take the news to the Indians who have fled into the mountains. They usually dealt with the chieftains and nobles in the following way. They made a grid of rods, which they placed on forked sticks, then lashed the victims to the grid and lightened a smoldering fire underneath, so that little by little, as those captors screamed in despair and torment, their souls would leave them and be passed to hell.
All right. Well, that was
real
horrifying. Christian. Yeah, real Christian. And maybe we censor some of it. Maybe we don't. I don't know. Honestly, no. That was. I'd never heard. I'd always heard about the hand thing, but like that was more than I was ready for. Honestly, like that. I will definitely be putting a disclaimer at the beginning of the episode.
No, we definitely need a trigger for this episode.
Yeah, this is like. I mean, that would be insanity. Like
that is the priest who accompanied Columbus alongside direct first source.
So with that one, I don't know if you're going to have a response to this, other than also just what the fuck. So number 3 of why we should be celebrating Christopher Columbus. This is more of sounds petty more than anything. If Columbus is off limits to celebrate, so are indigenous peoples.
Wait, okay, explain this to me.
Yeah, I'm going to read their thing. And you'll okay. Jarrett Stepman. Oh, right. Also writes in his book, The War on History. Oh my God. I didn't even.
Yeah, I hate this person already.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I didn't even read that when I clipped this out. I just read the quote. Oh my God. Okay. Jarrett Stepman also writes in his book, The War on History. What is never explained is why so-called indigenous peoples are worthy of celebration if Columbus is not. Pre-Columbian civilizations from Mexico to Peru were nearly all responsible for brutal violence on a large scale long before Columbus arrived on the shores of the New World, including human sacrifices, even of children, sometimes by tearing out the victim's still beating heart. So someone saw Apocalypto and just ran with it.
They were like, Mel Gibson is definitely good on historical accuracy.
He got it right.
Like, he's big on historical accuracy.
Regardless of whether or not they did that, like, okay, but you also did not have to come here so because they did it before, they deserve to be killed by Columbus. Is that what you're telling me?
Also, he's lumping in hundreds of cultures. Hundreds of cultures.
Again, look at the map of the Native Americans in North America.
No one can celebrate any culture ever because there's every single nation and every single culture has committed horrible acts to people at some point. But second off, the difference is you are criticizing an entire culture of people in one, lumping them in and saying everything about their culture is bad because of this specific thing that I can point out as a cultural thing that is not a norm and not acceptable even. Yeah. Like that's all bad, as opposed to one individual and holding them accountable for their actions. Yeah. That is the difference. Is when you criticize Columbus, you're saying this person did these specific bad things. When you say oh, well, Native Americans can't be criticized because at some point they did bad things as a community. Well, then I guess we can't criticize anyone.
They can't be trusted.
Exactly.
Like,
I like it's ridiculous to say, well, we can't criticize one person because y'all don't want to criticize and y'all don't want to commit racism and lump every person into the same group. I mean, that would literally be like saying, well, we can't celebrate European culture or history at all because of colonialism. Yeah. Like, we're no more St. Patty's Day for the Irish.
Celebrate the Catholic Church because of the Crusades.
The Irish killed all them pagans after they converted, so can't celebrate that anymore. Like, can't celebrate July 4th anymore because of all the horrible war crimes America's committed. Like, nobody fucking says that. The reason we don't want to celebrate Columbus Day is because that is celebrating a specific person.
So one person.
That was a horrible person.
And who didn't do any of the things they're saying that he did. Like, I mean, he didn't, like, the things that he didn't discover America. He did not find out the world is round.
He didn't accomplish anything other than surviving
anything
a boat
other than being bad at math and going the wrong way. Okay. Two of the last things.
And dying in poverty, hated and made fun of. Yeah.
Yeah. Two of the last things. Columbus is innocent of most of the charges against him.
That's just a lie.
What's your explanation?
That's
just an outright
just
lie.
A lie. That's
Columbus
just a lie.
strictly. Oh, here you go.
I provided two first document sources.
And these sources. It's only quoting from I guess the War on History, and then the one singular article from the Daily Signal, I think is what I said. I don't care. It's stupid. Okay. Columbus strictly told his crew not to do things like maraud or rape, and instead to treat the native people with respect. There are many examples in his writings where he gave instructions to this effect. So he had to do it multiple times. One wasn't good enough. Okay. Most of the time when injustices occurred, Columbus wasn't even there. There were terrible diseases that got communicated to the natives, but he can't be blamed for that. I mean, he can.
First off, I take the point that, like, the vast majority of American natives, indigenous American peoples that died after, Western colonial
disease
expansion.
That we brought over, we didn't have to come there.
Agreed. But it wasn't intentional. I take that point.
Sure,
let's all let's say 92% of the genocide was an accident. Cool. I mean, still horrible, but okay. Your point taken. Does that change the fact that Columbus said this to Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand about arriving at the first island that he came to? As soon as I arrived in the Indies, in the first island which I found, I took some of the natives by force in order that they might learn and might give me information of whatever there is in these parts of value. And so it was that they soon understood us and we them, either by speech or signs, and they have been very serviceable. So the first island he came to, he showed them what guns were and then said, "You belong to me now."
He
real
showed
cool
up,
dude.
And like one of the main islands was called which one was it? Tatum, I believe it was called. I might be getting that name wrong. It's in my notes, but it's just not highlighted for some reason. He showed up, asked for gold. They didn't know what gold was because their island didn't have it. Murdered them, and then went back and came back with 17 ships and 1,200 people. That island went from over 200,000 in a population to 200, like after all was said and done, into the 1510 or something like that. Last thing, and here is the last bit from Focus on the Family. Then we can go to the actual few things that he actually did. Historical figures should be viewed in the light of their greatest achievements, not their worst mistakes. So even if he did, they basically in the article with, even if he did do it, we shouldn't judge him for it. Like, he still founded our country.
That is their last point.
Yeah, that's so.
And I have to say, that's why we talk about Hitler's work on the Autobahn.
Thank God the Autobahn exists.
I mean, that's why we talk about Stalin's revitalization of industry in Moscow and St. Petersburg.
Thomas Jefferson inventing the swivel chair.
Exactly. We definitely
chair, one of the two.
We definitely gauge historical figures based off the good, best things that they did regularly.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's ridiculous. What the fuck are you talking about? You gauge them as a human being on all the things they did, good or bad,
you're all
including that. Christopher Columbus was a genocidal, right-wing, white supremacist, maniac, Christian colonizer.
I'm going to read and blast through them. because it's a Fox article. We're going to link to both of these in the description. Just the 9 reasons why he was a murderer, tyrant, and scoundrel. Columbus kidnapped a Caribbean woman and gave her to his crew to assault, which we had a firsthand account from the journals. Like this article quotes from journals, from his men, from Columbus himself, from all these other people. And then lastly, I'm going to get to why specifically this legend even exists. On the Hispaniola, a member of Columbus's crew publicly cut off an Indian's ear to shock others into submission. Not Indian. Come on, Vox. Write that better. I copied these. Columbus kidnapped and enslaved more than 1,000 people on Hispaniola. Columbus forced Indian natives to collect gold for him or else die. About 50,000 natives committed mass suicide rather than comply to the Spanish.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
56 years after his first voyage, only 500 out of the 300 native people remained on Hispaniola. So that's not even just the one I was talking about. Like there's others that like he wiped out whole like civilizations.
Yeah.
Like millions of people gone. Like erased.
I mean, no,
like,
he killed thousands, but I mean like
hundreds of thousands. Like, I mean, but on multiple
tens of
places,
thousands for sure.
like,
yeah.
Well, no, I mean, 300,000 down to 500.
But you got to know, a lot of that is disease, right? Like, I'm specifically, I'm specifically talking about the people he actively murdered.
Yeah,
which is tens of thousands of people.
He also was abusive to all the Spanish people he brought with him, and then apparently sold some kids into slavery, like as well. And then, not to mention, this one was. It took me a lot to process, like, of why this is happening. When they were transporting slaves, they had the collar around their neck rather than unhook it when a slave was being a person. When a person was tired, they would decapitate them instead of
cool
thing that way. So yeah, Columbus showed up, killed all these people. Didn't do any of the things that these people and that the Focus on the Family wants to say that he did. The only reason this myth exists, in 1828, Washington Irving, the author of Sleepy Hollow, great movie, great book too. This guy sucks. He did the first English language biography on Columbus, found out that he sucked and said, that's not okay. So I'm going to say that he found out the world was round and that he discovered America. And then we had that book. Then the Italians, Italian people immigrated here. They latched onto Columbus as being the founder of Chimera.
We are a chimera of a country, to be fair. Yeah.
Chimerica. Oh man, I need to remember that. But yeah, they latched onto that and the myth just took off. I mean, we got the Knights of Columbus. We've got, just Italian Americans think, and I don't even think was he actually Italian or wasn't he like a hodgepodge from like he was like from every country.
He was from one of the Italian city-states, I'm pretty sure. And he went to multiple countries trying to get funded for this trip. He was a
self-hating Jew too, right? Like he wanted that like not to be public. I heard he was
Catholic.
Jewish. Oh, was he?
He was Catholic.
I heard he was secretly Jewish and he tried to hide that or something like that. Well,
no, I don't think he could have worked. He couldn't work for Isabella. That's you heard because he couldn't have worked for Isabella or Ferdinand as a Jew. They had excommunicated Jews from Spain.
That's why I thought he was trying to hide. Or I had heard he was trying to hide it.
He was a devout Catholic Italian man. I don't.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. So much misinformation existed over the years. Like he found America and discovered that the world was round. Like it's hard. It was hard for me and any of us in school to keep this straight, and they just straight up lied to us for generations. Like, and now it's solidified and now it's going away kind of because of people like you out there, people tearing down his statues, throwing them into the water. It's great. They did it in, I don't remember what town that was. That was great.
Bob, my FBI agent, I've never torn down a statue ever.
No,
definitely never been at a statue tearing down ever anywhere in Dallas.
None of us here have. We don't have any here in Texas.
We just have Confederate there's no Confederate
statues.
Monuments in Texas.
Right on the Texas Capitol. That's fun.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So Christopher Columbus, bad guy. Sorry you had to hear all that, audience, but you also needed to hear all of that if you had any doubts about Christopher Columbus because he sucked. He was a bad man who did bad things, and we shouldn't be. It's just like when we know. It's one thing to like whitewash history. It's another thing to just absolutely make it up. And that's what definitely the right wing has been trying to do for a while now, especially with PragerU, which will be our next episode about how they're infiltrating Florida schools. They tried to infiltrate Texas, and I don't think it actually worked very well, or they're at least going to be in private schools in a lot of places that they can adopt that. And yeah, they're just making history up, saying the slaves made an agreement with their masters and everything was fine. Don't worry, who did they say? Oh, Frederick Douglass said in one of their cartoons that slavery was an agreement between the slaves and their masters, and everything was fine. And like it's something to that effect. Their cartoon is like
they learned valuable skills.
Real bad. Yeah, they learned transferable skills. Yeah, that's. Their version of this, the right wing's version of history, is upsetting. And
this is verging off topic, but every person at PragerU deserves a long walk off a very short pier. Would be the way my grandfather would say that. So
yeah,
there's
water below it; they can swim. Unless it's some liberal propaganda to learn how to swim. I don't fucking know. Like, who knows?
It very well may be at this point.
Only leftists know how to swim. Don't look up.
Well, I wish only leftists would know how to swim, because then maybe
swim, widen your hands. Just
maybe Christopher Columbus would have drowned like the dumb bitch he deserved to be in the ocean if he wouldn't have known how to swim. But either way, what I will say to our audience is this man was bad. He was a bad rapist genocider. It takes 20 minutes of Googling to get
one oatmeal cartoon. The oatmeal did a very good thing on it, and it fixed it all.
But you can get what I mean here is you can get. There's a lot of bad people throughout history. You know, Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar were. Well, just Caesar's probably a bad example, but there's a lot of people throughout history that did horrible things that we don't have a lot of information on, that we can't confirm whether this is propaganda of their enemies. You know, Caligula, for instance, like we can't confirm if this is made up or if this is exaggerated or whatever. There are first-hand primary document sources from people who were genocided, raped, sold into slavery, people who did it with him. For Christopher Columbus.
His first mate, like, right? And one of them on the Nina Pinner Santa Maria. I don't know which one they were all technically on together. His first mate. Friends. He brought a kid to a friend. It's like, here you go. Like, as a gift. He gave a person as a gift, like, which would be a normal thing in America. So if anything, he inspired America to just do slavery, I guess. Who knows? That's all. That's a hyperbole.
I want to let you know that after he regularly crippled, cut off the hands and feet of these people, the ears, gouged out eyes, raped, put babies to the spear, cut open pregnant women's entrails, drawn and quartered men. After all that, this is what he initially thought of them and why he knew he could get away with that, which probably speaks to them more than it does to European colonialists, which is, he said of the native Arawaks that he met, but they so are incredibly timid. It is true that after they have been reassured and have lost their fear, they are so guileless and generous with all that they possess that no one would believe it who has not seen it. They refuse nothing that they possess if it be asked of them. On the contrary, they invite anyone to share it and display as much love as if they would give their hearts. They are content with whatever trifle of whatever kind that may be given to them, whether it be value or valueless. People who cared more about meeting new people and learning more about the people they were meeting than they ever had an idea of like a value to gold or some currency that made your value in society based off what you could produce. People who just were interested and curious to meet these people in bright new clothes on giant wooden ships who were willing to give them food and shelter were raped and murdered by the thousands because they were open to being kind, and Columbus was a monster.
Yeah.
And worshiping a monster, not good policy, in my opinion.
Yeah. Give up on Columbus, guys. You're holding on to your love of Columbus out of spite at this point. If like after hearing everything you just heard, again, firsthand accounts, and there are plenty of other articles and sources and books and everything that have been written on this out there. They give firsthand account. The People's History of the United States is that the book by Howard Zinn.
Mm-hmm. Howard Zinn, great book. You should all read it.
Everybody should read that book. I'm going to pick up a copy myself after this recording because I don't have it. I thought it was on my bookshelf and it is not. But he did all these things. We have the history of it. Like Andrew said, we don't really know everything about Caligula or Caesar. They could have just, history is written by the victors, right? Well, this time history was written by the people on his fucking ship, and they admitted to it all. Like, so you are just being willfully ignorant at this point if you still want to celebrate Columbus Day as it is, and not just celebrate the indigenous peoples from everywhere in every part of this hemisphere and Australia, because the British fucked that whole area up too. Let's not get into what they did in Australia,
Africa,
New Zealand,
Ireland,
and Africa, Ireland,
I think
everywhere else.
Western European colonialism has kind of fucked over a lot of indigenous people.
Of humanity branched out to the rest of the goddamn world and just killed everybody. Said this is ours, and to just willfully ignore that is immoral and irresponsible. Wrestle with that in your own life. I'm not calling you anybody specifically, my grandpa is a member of the Knights of Columbus. It's a rich tradition or something. Okay, whatever. I'm probably not going to get through to you. Andrew's not going to get through to you. But at the end of the day, you know all this history now. These things are written down. You're willfully ignoring the murder and rape of entire civilizations that were wiped off the face of the earth by just colonialism, and that was not started by Columbus, but brought here for sure by Columbus. And that's it. Fuck him. Go read the oatmeal, go read the People's History of the United States, and that's all I have. So
fuck Andrew, Columbus.
Fuck Columbus. All right, on 3. 1, we're not going to get it together because we have.
No, there's no way it's going to work, but we're going to try.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Fuck Columbus.
Fuck Columbus.
There you go. Right
up. That was pretty good. That was actually pretty.
All right, man. Good night, everybody. Fuck Christopher Columbus. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And go watch Reservation Dogs. That show rules. You want it? Life Now.
I haven't seen that yet. I'll check it out.
The indigenous peoples, and I don't remember what part of Oklahoma, but it's like just Life Now for folks that were just that have been fucked over by the greater United States. And it's such a fantastic show. Taika Waititi made it with, I'm forgetting the fella he wrote the show with, but I could watch every episode a million times. It is such a good show. Cannot highly recommend it enough. On Hulu, FX. Don't pirate it. Watch it. Good night. You've been listening to America the Conversation, a production of Shway Media and America the Podcast Presents. The show was created and is hosted by Tim Phillippe and Andrew Turner. The show's theme song is by Timmy Two Step, and all other music and sounds heard in this show were procured through the amazing companies listed in our show notes. America the Conversation is mixed and edited by Tim Phillippe at Shway Media Studios in Austin, Texas. For more information, please visit shwaymedia.com. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
This has been a production of Shway Media, all rights reserved. For more information, please visit shwaymedia.com.